Brace for Impact.
Welcome to the 19th episode of Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling. As always, live from Nonstop Studios, I'm the Ace Tavern Acefield Retro, and joined on this Thursday evening by that dude himself at Mullet.mania, Colton Jesse. What's up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Man, just catching my breath after Bound for Glory and all sorts of big news this week.
So if you guys are just joining us watching Impact, of course, you just saw that on Impact on Access, they replayed. They were gracious enough to show some of the matches again. We saw the full Josh Alexander, Alex Shelley match. We saw some Trinity and Mickie James. And we also, of course, saw some of that awesome Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey, which begs the question, why? And I think you and I can probably make the assumption as to why they did it because of time constraints. Maybe they weren't able to get the Chicago Fallout tapings together, and we'll preview the card of what's going to be coming up the next few weeks. But any inclination on your end, if you had to really just hypothesize as to why they're doing this as far as a preview show? Is it strategic to get eyes on Bound for Glory, or is this just a panic move?
Hard to say, man. I think it could be, it could go either way. I could see it being either way with just alone that Mike Bailey and Will Ospreay match should not be kept behind a paywall from anybody. It was easily in contention for one of the best matches of the year. I mean, Bellcaster came out on social media and said, hands down, best wrestling match of 2023. And I think I think it makes a strong case for it, man. It was absolutely incredible. But I would imagine that, maybe we just don't have everything together from the tapings just yet. It was a sold out show. It was a rowdy crowd both nights from what I understand. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on. Initially I was like, well, does this have something to do with the big announcement we got at the end of Bound for Glory? But we know that nothing's really coming with that until the end of January, or it was till January officially. So, but
right. To
bring everybody up to speed, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, and we'll cover this at length in the news. But I mean, unless you're living under a rock, if you've been anywhere on pro wrestling social media. Impact Wrestling made the announcement at the end of the show on Saturday that they are changing the name back to TNA, going back to Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. So that's been a lot of buzz about that all week. It was a cool, they did allude early in the show that, hey, we got a big announcement at the end of the show. Stick around. There was a video package that was a pre-tape that was very much had a TNA feel written all over it, and I didn't see it coming by any means, but yeah, here we are.
So before we move into the inside and discuss all the stuff going on with Scott D'Amore, Tom Hannafin interview, the TNA changeover, and everything going on with that, I'll give my 2 cents on this. I feel like it has a lot to do with logistically the things that get in the way of taping. And at CICERO Stadium, they have, I think it was like up to 15, 16 matches over the course of 2 days. They taped in Chicago. I was looking forward to seeing Josh Alexander take on Will Ospreay. We're going to get to see that in the coming weeks. Of course, you're also going to get Alex Shelley versus John Gresham. There's going to be that Digital Media Championship match that's going to be happening. And there's a lot of matches that have already been taped. So if you're looking to get the spoilers, you can check them out. And they're going to be staggered throughout. And I'm going to preview the card. It seems like based on one of the matches, what's going to be like a Thanksgiving themed match, that these tapings are going to stretch until the end of November. That's insane because they're going to sprinkle in the United Kingdom tour as well. So I think we have the stock canon tapings of Impact from now until almost the end of the year already, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, that's wild to think about. I mean, the end of the year is a lot closer than it seems, but I mean, because yeah, here we are, this Tuesday's Halloween. So I mean, man, that's crazy to think that we're almost in November, and yeah, just 4 quick weeks we'll be in December. So that's wild that they're stretching this out that far.
It kind of feels to me like there was a lot of momentum going into this announcement. There was a buzz in a positive way. That seems like a missed opportunity, and maybe they look at it from the other lens of they want to showcase their best matches because they're going to bring in the casual eyes like, oh, let me check out what Impact's doing prior to the switchover. Maybe people are going to seek it out. Maybe they heard enough good things about the Will Ospreay versus Speedball match. It can go both ways because sometimes you might alienate the fan base that paid for the pay-per-view, that feel a certain type of way, that like they could have waited. Maybe you make them feel, I don't know. We always talk about the positivity that, radiates through this Impact or TNA fan base. Everyone is super positive, but you might alienate some fans that feel like they missed out. Like, I didn't have to buy the pay-per-view. Maybe you lose out on buy rates for the next pay-per-view or premium live event that they have on their app. thinking that it's going to be showcased on their TV show on a weekly basis following it. I don't know. It's a risky move. I understand logistically sometimes you have to do this, but I don't know. We're sitting here after. I was looking forward to see the setting some new things in motion for post-Bound for Glory, but we're still kind of, soaking in what was a great night in Chicago.
And I get it if it's not a pivot due to production issues or anything like that. Bound for Glory is the biggest show of the year. I understand wanting to, kind of have a recap week. I think that's fair. But I mean, if you didn't watch the pay-per-view, you still, even with everything that you got tonight, you missed quite a bit. I mean, the tag title match between, we'll break down the card in its entirety as we go on throughout the show tonight. But the tag match alone between ABC and the Rascals was, I mean, man, we didn't get that tonight. That was incredible. The top to bottom, man, it was a great card.
Absolutely. With that being said, let's get into the insight and talk about the news and really break down this changeover to back to TNA. Let's get to the insight.
The insight.
All right, for the insight, as Colton so beautifully laid out for us, it was revealed at the conclusion of Bound for Glory that Impact Wrestling will be changing its name back to Total Nonstop Action, and the name will officially go into effect starting with the promotion's Hard to Kill pay-per-view in January 2024. So we covered this on Wrestling Tonight, discussed it at length, talked about the changeover, just really initial knee-jerk reactions because we recorded literally the morning after Bound for Glory. But now we have a little bit more context because we had that sit down with Scott D'Amore, who sat down on the Impact Associated podcast with Tom Hannafin, of course, the voice of Impact. And they really addressed some of these questions head on. Were you able to check out this interview, Colton?
I've read pieces of it, but I did not get a chance to watch it. So I need to go back and do that. But yeah, it's been I always love anything with Tom Hannafin and Scott D'Amore. So excited they got in front of it and did this so quickly.
It certainly was one of those things where you expected it to be canned noise in a lot of ways, where you felt it would be, I don't know, some sort of promotional thing that you would see, I don't know, behind a company wall. But this felt like a very genuine conversation with two people who very much care about the brand of Impact / TNA. And some of the questions were as, transparent as you would ask for. And so Scott D'Amore was asking, and what was asked, because some people were asking what went into the decision, and was it just a long-term process? Was it something in the immediate that wanted them to go back to the TNA brand name? And Scott D'Amore addressed it head on. And he said, I quote, "When I got here and took over the helm going into 2018, the company had gone through so much. It had been TNA Wrestling, then Impact Wrestling, then I think it might have briefly been TNA, then it was GFW, then it was Impact. Coming in, the last thing it needed was another name change. What it needed was to figure itself out. What it needed was stability. It needed consistency. It needed respectability. And we spent a lot of time under the Impact banner doing just that. And I think we've proven ourselves." So then he continued, but the fact is, when this company was formed, when the idea was first hatched, 3 men on a boat with Jeff and Jerry Jarrett and Bob Ryder, it was Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. That's what they were looking for. And I think while we have found some stability under the Impact banner, I'm very proud of that. I think what we now have is we're ready to go there and have our growth and our true success. He finishes up by saying, our true second golden era under our true name, TNA Wrestling. So before we move into the other quotes about specifics of what's really going to go into this, your thoughts on Scott D'Amore's feeling on this, and do you think it was the right decision?
After hearing Scott's thoughts on it, I'm feeling a lot better about the decision. My knee-jerk reaction live in the moment watching Bound for Glory was, just coming off a high of that incredible card, and then this really kind of came out of left field for me. This was not what I was expecting. Selfishly, my first thought was like, "Fuck, man, we have to change the name of the show now." like I was just kind of left being like, "Oh, all right, well." And the most confusing thing for me too is, because it ends with, after the video pre-tape, Scott D'Amore yells into the mic, "We're back," and then they go off the air. I'm like, but you didn't really go anywhere, man. We've been here this whole time. We've just been calling it something different. But I like this. I like what Scott had to say in the Hannafin interview. I think that it really kind of put it all, the decision into focus for me. And yeah, I think, you and I had talked off air about just the idea of them kind of owning their history, both good and bad, as a promotion. And I think there's a lot to be said about that in a positive way. And I like it. I think I see why they made that decision. And, I was on the debate this last week filling in for the show that's going to air this coming Sunday, and then Monday drop on audio. We were talking about this name change and whether or not we felt that it was a mistake or not. And one thing that got brought up by multiple panel guests was that, this is a good way to maybe get some eyes that aren't on the Impact product back on it, just for that nostalgia grab. The fan that was a big TNA fan that hasn't really paid any attention to what Impact's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. They're going to see the TNA name pop up on their social feeds and be like, "Oh man, what's going on here? I got to check this out." So I think it's a strategic move in the long run, and I'm well, after having the time for the smoke to clear and get a little clarification from our man Scott Demore, I'm feeling good about the decision.
Absolutely. Nostalgia really sells. And we know that as well. And streamline your history, as you mentioned, we discuss it all the time. What WWE has over AEW in a lot of ways, aside from more money and just it's really time and history. And TNA has a wealth of history. If you dig through some of the history here and streamline it back to TNA, where they started in 2002 and really what began inside of this TNA brand has branched out to now. And if you streamline that name, Impact Wrestling, back to Total Nonstop Action, as you mentioned before, you may be able to grasp onto fans that didn't know TNA still existed. They may not know what it is. And I think we take for granted that we're so in the weeds with wrestling that you assume what it is. But even for the diehard wrestling fan that's been following Impact or TNA or GFW or whatever they were called, it's still difficult for us to follow just the timeline. And I think finally right now, they're at the benefit of both things, owning their history, both good and bad, and also looking forward to the future with the most consistent, most star-driven roster they've had ever. And I mean that right now, because even when you look at the roster they had in TNA in 2006, 2007 with the likes of Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, there's no roster on a consistent basis that can put on the cards that these guys put on a weekly basis. And I really believe there is an awesome mix of veterans and young talent and amazing women. And there's no roster that in Impact's history that's been better than this. And I really believe this roster compares to any roster in wrestling right now. And I really think, combining that with the nostalgia piece as time goes on, rose-colored glasses create all this sort of, good feelings towards things. And I mentioned it on Wrestling Tonight about 1995 WWF gets looked at in good graces because those people that grew up watching it, they grew up with it. But 1995 New Generation WWF was absolutely horrible. And something to be said about just nostalgia. And for those that remember TNA back in the day, they might have grown up with it, with the, Motor City Machine Guns were their first favorite wrestlers, or all those pieces to TNA. There's the nostalgia lens, and now it's a product you actually can be proud of.
Absolutely. I mean, going back, looking at TNA, there was good, there was bad in the past, but I think you hit the nail on the head that the fact that nostalgia sells. It's really, I think it's going to bring some new eyes to the product. And yeah, I mean, this roster is stacked. Demore said it himself that, the last thing the company needed when he came in 2018 was a name change and needed stability. And we say it every week. It is the most, we don't use the word stable, but it's the most consistent product that you get in pro wrestling from week to week, week in and week out. It's, consistent good storytelling, consistent good in-ring work. And yeah, it's, it was a big surprise, man. It really, this was, after we had already had the announcement this year that they were going to be putting, a huge investment into the upgrading the production aspect of things. This was not the big announcement. When they teased that they had a big announcement for the end of Bound for Glory, this is not what I saw coming, which is great. I love being surprised in pro wrestling. So this is an exciting, this is the second, the second era of TNA, and I'm excited to see it.
So he continues in this interview, and we'll talk about some of the specifics that people are asking questions about timeline and what other changes will be made. But he was saying that just because they're changing back to TNA doesn't mean that the Impact brand doesn't have value. And TNA is its company at the core, but the Impact brand is something they want to rely on. Keeping the show on Thursday nights being called TNA Impact, that's going to bring back really the nostalgia value of that brand for people that grew up watching. I mean, believe it or not, the Impact brand itself, and tying both together. The other piece that we're talking about as well is, he was pointing out how TNA really changed the industry by pushing small wrestlers and really putting a highlight on the independent scene and really showcasing tag team wrestling. And, first and foremost, giving women a platform that they've never gotten in pro wrestling. And, it's hard to put an identity of what TNA/Impact is, but I think Scott Demore, you could see through the passion in his voice when he's talking in this interview that they want to make sure that they have and continue to be exactly who they've been the last couple of years. Whatever name they have, they want to just make sure that they're making it clear the mission remains the same. Continue to provide consistent programming.
Yeah, consistent, great programming, offering a diverse and unique roster. I mean, this is one, and I just being able to pay homage to what came before them to get them here. I mean, their impact is what I mean. We can still call it impact until the end of the year. That's what I said on the show. The name change is not officially taking place until January 2024. So for now, it's still impact to me. Damn it. I'm excited though. I like the idea of them paying homage to kind of the road that got them here, and it's just there's been a ton of buzz about it all week, man. There's a there's a lot of opinions of and a lot of discussions, man, and kind of getting into one of the other stories we've seen here is Scott got asked what he'd say to those who assume this means a return to Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett, Vince Russo era. And he said this isn't about looking back, this is about looking forward. Certainly TNA Impact has had its ups and downs over the years, but we're looking at taking the right things that worked, bringing them back. We're looking at doing a better job of managing how things are handled. And like I said, are we going to make mistakes? Absolutely. But we're going to do more great than we do missteps. This, he said, this isn't about any one person. It's not about Jeff Jarrett. It's not about Vince Russo. It's not about Scott D'Amore. This is about a locker room and a company that feels something special. And it's about a fan base that I think is starting to feel something special.
Dude, I really just taking it straight on and talking about really, I mean, we talked about a lot of the positive buzz, but there is still the negative buzz that comes with the TNA name. And I mentioned this on Wrestling Tonight as well. There's a lot of the meme value of whoever shows up in the Impact Zone, or the bad parts of TNA are remembered in a significant way for a lot of people. So he's taking that head on, recognizing that it comes with the name. And I think he's taking it as a mission where they're on stable ground to reestablish what the TNA brand is in a lot of minds. And you take really this mixed bag of the amazing plethora of wrestling we get on a weekly basis and sometimes on a Sunday or a Saturday on the Impact brand, and just put the TNA name. It won't be long until those knowledge of the Dixie Carter, Jeff Jarrett, Vince Russo type of wrestle crap that people look back at in a negative way, that's going to be gone. And that's going to be in the history of, people are going to look at TNA and they're reestablishing what they are. And those three letters, that logo is going to be associated with the Josh Alexanders, the Alex Shelley, maybe the Will Ospreay if he decides to sign here. We'll talk about that in the news as well. But there's a lot to be said about reestablishing the brand and having the opportunity to do that. They're on stable ground. This is a time as ever. And streamline your history is very, very important to Scott D'Amore.
Yeah, which I think is that's a great way to take these questions, man, because there's going to be a lot. And I like that Scott, like you said, just taking it head on. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't try to dodge questions. He took everything on directly and just shot everybody straight. It didn't sound like a PR campaign. It sounded like Scott D'Amore, which is part of the reason that I'm such a big fan of the way this company is run, is because of his leadership.
So he finished up with everyone was asking about some of the changes, and he did say there will be new title belt designs for the championships. They're going to be unveiled in time. The current champs will all remain the same. The lineage of the titles will continue, all that stuff. But they're also going to be debuting a new set. We knew that as well. We didn't know the name change, but we knew they're going to change production. And he really said, and I quote, "It will honor the promotion's history while also be forward-looking." So whatever that means. I know that everyone was looking at the picture of the Bound for Glory set was reminiscent of a WCW inspired set, or maybe they even said it was a WCW inspired set. I saw some of that, and I know that was sort of tongue in cheek, and you don't know where some of those pieces go, like-minded with at the NYWC Sportatorium. It's the brick wall where the ECW arena used to have it. It's there, lives there consistently, just because Mikey Whipwreck brought it there. That's his school. So it's like, this could be an actual piece of the WCW setup, but I digress. But he also confirmed that the six-sided ring will not be making its return. And he said the six-sided ring causes more injuries and wear and tear on the wrestlers, which was always the critique. And he said the idea for the TNA name to return was first formulated in early of this year. And he thinks it's a testament to the type of people they have in the company, both on camera and behind the scenes, that the news never leaked before the announcement. As a reference, Hard to Kill 2024, taking place from the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas on Saturday, January 13th, will be the grand unveiling of the TNA brand. New logo, new set, new everything. So this is exciting times, man. And I think you and I got in like right at the right time to discuss. First of all, the programming is excellent, but it seems like there's going to be a lot more eyes on the product than there were. And if they can keep those eyes, it's about doing that. And that's why I felt like tonight was a little bit of a missed opportunity. And you can look at it from both ways, glass half full, glass half empty type of thing. But I don't know, to show them your weekly product, I feel like would have been I don't know, a little more consistent. It's almost like selling someone a bag of goods when you're going to show them the Bound for Glory main event on a weekly TV show. If someone happened to turn over because they just watched the event, or maybe they heard about the news on TNA, I don't know. I understand logistics get in the way, but that's why I'm like, you have to almost ride this momentum into this new wave of new fans that are here.
Yeah, this was not what I was expecting after the big announcement at the end of the show on Saturday that we would be getting sort of a recap episode. I was expecting them to, you know, how, and not to not because this is the way I think, you know, it should be done, but I mean, typically, you know, WWE has a big announcement or some big swing that happened at a pay-per-view, man. They're cramming it down your throat on weekly TV because to hit all the people that missed it. But you know, maybe, you know, it's Impact and WWE are not the same product. They're not the same, anywhere near the same company. Most people, I think, that are watching Impact week to week are watching the pay-per-view. I don't think there's a lot of
exactly.
I don't think there's a lot of
100% my point. Yep.
A lot of viewers. I don't think there's a lot of viewers that miss the pay-per-view that are watching the weekly TV. I think the people who are watching it weekly are bought in and they saw and everybody's there. But yeah, I think you're right, man. It's a little bit of a momentum shift, but I mean, they're stretching out these tapings through damn near the end of the year anyways. So I'm assuming they're probably taking this time, you know, January's going to be here before we know it. So I'm sure there's still, even though it's been in plans and in talks since the beginning of 2023 to make this change, I'm sure there's still a lot of work to be done in these last couple of months. So maybe that's where their head is all right, we need to take a little bit of this time, stretch this out a little bit and put the energy where we need to get ready for the rebrand.
Not to mention they're in the UK right now, so they'll worry about an international tour, all those things that go into it. So their eyes are elsewhere. And I hate to say it, the last 3 months is almost like punting. You know, they're getting ready for this new kickoff and let's get ready for the second half of we're going to become TNA. And of course, they're going to still drive out amazing programming, but it's almost like a lame duck manager at the end of a baseball season. Like you almost know it's about next year at this point. So it's about January 2024 when the new brand kicks in. Of course, you want to continue to do amazing stuff and sign new people and have fans excited to see your product for the rest of October, what's left of it, November and December. But it really is all eyes on January. And that's what it really feels like when we're not getting not live, but we're not getting a weekly programmatic TV show right here. And that might change going forward, where we might have a little bit more of the emphasis on live. Maybe they're going to tape that week instead of doing excess tapings. We're going to discuss the tapings that happen here, but it really seems like it's going to be until end of November. We're going to get tapings in Chicago. So we saw that in Memphis. That was how many tapings in a row? It was 4 batches of them. So, you know, I want to move away from that. If you want to get bigger than that, you have to do bigger arenas and you have to do a little bit less consistent bulk tapings. And it seems like they're moving that way.
Yeah, I would hope so. You know, with the investment in the production and the name change, I would hope that is maybe not the immediate destination, but that's where we're headed.
So we also have Jeff Jarrett. Of course, he has a podcast, so he's able to react in real time to things. We know he's involved in AEW. He's an active wrestler. He wrestled Eddie Kingston, I believe, was on Rampage or Collision recently. So he was talking about on his My World podcast with Conrad Thompson that he, obviously one of the godfathers of TNA, was asked about it changing their name back in 2023. What happened when they changed it back in 2011? And so he begins recalling TNA changing the name in 2011 and said, I'm surprised in a few different ways in that the conversations I had with Anthem, I'll just leave it at that. All the way at the highest levels, I was pretty clear with them. Hey, guys, in my opinion, Impact Wrestling, naming that the company was almost dead on arrival in 2011. I said, I just think Impact Wrestling is dead. I had those conversations in depth. I gave them the history, but they were well aware of it. They bought the show, Impact, from day one. Anthem did. They knew it was TNA Wrestling Presents Impact. So this was interesting because this is a guy who's not involved anymore. This is a guy who probably is tied emotionally to the brand, right? How could he not be? This was something, it's like watching your kid go off to college. This is his baby. But he also talked about Global Force Wrestling and how that played a part in TNA's history. And again, he is not under any sort of gag clause. This guy can say whatever he wants. And he says, so going down that road and knowing I'm not a big fan of it, and that's where in my mind, hey, if you don't like Global Force Wrestling, we can figure out some kind of way and use the storyline to go back to TNA. There's a lot of equity, and the library is named. The international partners have always, there are so many places, India specifically, Australia in a lot of ways. They never quit calling it TNA Wrestling. The double entendre isn't nearly as prevalent outside the US. So all the information in my head, that's like why I was like, okay, so now 6 years after you acquired it, you're rebranding. So that would be a little bit of a surprise to me. He continues talking about TNA's future. and really focused on Scott D'Amore's vision. He said, at the end of the day, it's all about execution. What is his vision? That's what I'm most excited about. Scott, what's your vision of TNA? I know what mine was. I'm well aware, and we can talk about different things. The 4 different divisions, how's that going to be presented or promoted? The 6-sided ring, to me, there's a lot of nuances. At the end of the day, it's the story. I was blessed with fantastic talent, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, but I'm excited because it's good for the industry. Change is good, and there is without question. So, yeah, I mean, Jeff Jarrett, again, he'll always be tied to TNA/Impact Wrestling, good, bad, or indifferent. Him giving his stamp of approval on the name change really focused on, he never thought they should have changed over from TNA, and said a lot of companies, like a lot of fans, never stop calling it that. So there might be that crossover that now that the name is back and you can Google it and find out where they're on TV, maybe that's going to bring some people back.
Yeah, I would think so, man. And I think that was cool to hear that come from Double J. And to be honest, man, you talk about the history of this company. I completely forgot about Global Force Wrestling being the name for a while. Like, I just totally edited that out of my memory. So yeah, I mean, this has been a lot of places. And the fact that, I don't think it's any argument that this company is in the most stable and consistent place that it's ever been since its inception, that, we bring it full circle and we go back to using the name that, is known and loved and revered by a lot of fans, both current and past.
I thought it was very telling, though, when he talked about Australia, India, different countries all still calling it TNA Wrestling. And yeah, I feel like there's some value to that. First and foremost, like changing the name, he recognized as a wrestling guy. When Anthem purchased it, they're historically not wrestling people. So you got people in a boardroom making decisions about a wrestling product that isn't conducive to what is good on the screen, and not recognizing the value of the history. They're looking at just a buzzword. Impact Wrestling to them sounds a little bit more buzzworthy than TNA in a lot of ways. Maybe you would go back and not name the company TNA just because of the fact, tits and ass and that kind of stuff that goes with it. Because people first go to that when you hear about TNA, but Total Nonstop Action, whatever, the 3 letters feel important because of the history, not because of the way it sounds on the screen. So I think he recognized back in 2011 when things were going, it was a dumpster fire over there and things were going to hell in a handbasket. He even recognized the only thing you have is your history. Why are we throwing it away?
Right. And as far as the double entendre goes with the name, like, I remember when TNA first came on the scene, that was my first thought was, oh, okay, well, is that tongue in cheek? Is that intentional? I think at this point, I don't think that abbreviation is as commonly used these days. So I feel like, at least on, generation of wrestling fans that are, your Gen Z wrestling fans, it's probably not even going to register at all. It's going to go right over their head. They're just going to see it for what it is. So I think a little time in between that is probably is probably a good thing, and going to help that name be taken a little bit more seriously going forward.
That's a really fair point. And I remember first hearing it as well. And just, I guess that was maybe the Anthem's idea, that maybe there are some people in there that thought of it that way and they wanted to move away from it. And rightfully so, if you're not in that world, but understanding that some of the wrestling lingo isn't so it's wrestling. And I think a lot of people that are in that world just accept the way things are said sometimes, and they accept what the words are for them. And, can't think of a specific example right now, but TNA being one of them. That the first thing when I hear TNA is, wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, that is part of it. But when you first hear it, it probably is jarring for some, corporate executives that are looking to buy this product.
Oh, certainly, yeah. You're definitely a certain type of network if that's the word you're hearing concerning your programming.
So Scott D'Amore was also very vocal about Will Ospreay, and Will Ospreay was on social media talking about how he had the best time of his career competing for Impact, and talked about how well everyone treated him, just the match with Speedball Mike Bailey and all the stuff that went into the stuff with facing Josh Alexander at the television taping. And we know Will Ospreay's contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling is set to expire in February of 2024. So he's looking to explore every possible option in his contract talks, lifting up a lot of leverage for himself, leaving everything open to whether it be AEW, WWE, now Impact Wrestling / TNA when they make the changeover. So during an interview with Tom Hannafin on Tuesday, the same one we're referencing before, Scott D'Amore stated that Ospreay is arguably the best wrestler in the world, and he said that any pro wrestling company would love to have Ospreay at the center of its universe. He also said that there would be a big piece of the pie waiting for him. So saying that he'd be an integral part about what they're doing here. And really just to me, and I've been very vocal about this, Will Ospreay to me is by far the best wrestler in the world, bar none. He is the proud owner of 7 of the 10 best matches of the year in 2023. There's no argument about the work rate. There's no argument about the charisma we saw in his short burst of time in AEW on a national landscape. This guy could be a building block that, TNA could eventually use to take the next step. Will they do that? I'm not sure if their pockets are deep enough for it, because unfortunately for everybody involved, I think, Will Ospreay might be genuine in this nature that he actually would go to TNA, but I think there's a lot of momentum, especially internationally, for WWE and for AEW to want Will Ospreay. And I think they can dig much deeper. And, as much as it'd be amazing to cover him on a weekly basis here, I think his landing spot's going to be elsewhere.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, selfishly, I would love for his landing spot to be Impact TNA, but I think, money talks, and I know that Will Ospreay definitely doesn't seem to be all about the money, but the guy's got a family. He's not in his 20s anymore, and he's got to go where the money's at. He's got to cut hay as the sunshine as the sun's out, if you will. And I think it's going to be AEW or WWE, man. I mean, we actually had this talk on the debate this week as well, and no matter where he lands, he's going to make a massive impact. Like you said, I mean, he is one of the best of the best, and wherever, I don't know if where he goes next will be his final stop. He's still got a lot of gas left in the tank, especially, if he continues to take great care of himself and, as long as he doesn't suffer any severe injuries. I mean, I think we've got a lot of Will Ospreay left to come. I would love it if because right now he's always struck me as a guy who likes to work, and he likes to work a lot of different places. And, with New Japan, he has had that opportunity where we've seen him in Impact, we've seen him in New Japan, we've seen him in AEW. And I feel like if he signed with AEW, he'd still be able to do that. And, we might still be able to see him on TNA from time to time. I understand the attractiveness of if he goes to, if we were to go to WWE, because you're probably going to cut your bump card in half, and you're going to, make more money than you've ever thought possible. But that would definitely lock him up from being able to appear on any other promotions.
So Scott D'Amore continues, said that opportunity is open to Will Ospreay. And I can tell you, I've had conversations with Anthem and everything else and let them know. And they're well aware of who Ospreay is and what Will Ospreay is. And, don't know where Will Ospreay is going to end up, but there's certainly a seat at the table here, and a meaningful one where he could be at the center of a lot of advancement and change that we talk about. The one thing here, and Scott D'Amore kind of alluded to it in other quotes, is that the fact that he's even considering it is a win in my book. And I know you don't want to acquiesce and just say, cool, we were like a runner-up or maybe the third runner-up. But the fact that it isn't even an option, that he's very complimentary of his time there, that he's even willing to work the talent there and Bound for Glory and do the tapings after, shows just how far they've come. This dude is going to be the hottest free agent in all pro wrestling, and really doesn't take his bookings lightly. He was saying before that he really wants to limit his bump card and make the most of what's left of his career. And I think if he limits the style and he can, not working New Japan Pro Wrestling will definitely help that. It just shows how far Impact has come / TNA, that he's even willing to consider it. And I think that's a win in itself.
Yeah, it speaks volumes about their locker room and just the way that they do business and the roster from top to bottom, about the way that they do things in this company is for debatably or arguably the best wrestler in the entire world. The fact that, your company's name is coming out of his mouth, that's huge.
So we know he'll be in action tomorrow, October 27th, at Turning Point in Newcastle, England, which this special, and we'll preview it in a sec here. But that's going to be airing on Friday, November 3rd. So as we said, Impact is getting in a plane from Chicago, heading over to the UK. They're there right now, getting ready for the Turning Point tapings. There's also going to be making stops throughout this. I think it's 4 different cities in the UK. So they're going to be making hay there, and they're going to be doing some production and some tapings we're going to be seeing. So some good stuff here. Will Ospreay is going to be featured taking on Eddie Edwards, which is going to be awesome. So we also have PCO, and we were talking about this. We were surprised that he got the W. I'm sure we were both watching and confused. But now it all makes sense, because they announced on Tuesday that PCO has signed a new contract with TNA / Impact. Further details about the terms are not disclosed, but PCO did come out and say, I really want to be a part of the new era of TNA wrestling, and Scott D'Amore made me an offer I could not refuse. As we know, his previous contract expired on October 30th, And as of last month, he gave his notice. We were kind of singing the requiem for the end of his career at Impact, saying, "Oh, it's been nice," and maybe they're moving forward. But no, he's locked up, and I'm not sure how long the deal is. The dude is, up there in age, but he's going to be here to stay for a bit. I mean, he's 55 years old. How many more years does he have in the ring? Maybe he's going to be contributed behind the scenes as well. But this dude is going to be in TNA to continue, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him stick around, man. They really swerved us there, though, for the week before. They're saying, "Oh, he resigned, he's out." I wonder. I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation that changed the tune, or maybe it was just a swerve all along, and so he's like, "You know what? Yeah, I'm not signing with Impact, but I'm signing with TNA." So yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm excited to see him stick around, man. Love PCO. Never, always excited to see the French Canadian Frankenstein. I'm interested to see what they do with him going forward, because I feel like, he obviously wants to work. So I don't think, if they didn't have a serious plan for him and some on-screen storylines coming up into the new year, I don't think that we would have made this announcement. So excited to see what his role is going forward in TNA.
Yeah, and I think he bridges the gap from what Impact was to what they want to become. And I think, as you mentioned before, his contributions in the ring might be limited for the next couple of years, and maybe it is a one-year deal. Who knows? But I think his contributions behind the scenes will be immense as you continue. Because as we said before, this locker room is very harmonious, and there's a lot to be said about just even Will Ospreay coming in as an outsider, really discussing just how amazing it was to be there, and just, something to be said. You want to kind of keep those pieces in place, not let them go. And we're watching Sami Callihan go elsewhere and PCO. You don't want to let too many of those stalwarts go away, because maybe they're the ones holding the locker room up, not knowing their leadership is just happening, in the private eye. We don't actually know what's happening. And if you start letting those guys go, and then, I don't know, why risk it when things are going so well?
Right. Hold on to what you got.
So we also talked about that Turning Point event that's happening tomorrow, and we have a card to preview here. And the latest match announced was the Impact Knockouts Championship being defended, and Deonna Purrazzo is going to be taking on Trinity. So we know the history between them. Trinity defeated Purrazzo to win the championship at Slammiversary in July. She successfully defended the title in August at Emergence. And this feels like this card. This reminds me of those cards back in the day, like WWF Insurrection, where nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen, especially since it's airing on delay. I don't foresee any championship changing hands. That's not to say that this card is not exciting to look at, and we're going to preview it. The program to me is Trinity and Jordynne Grace. They have that lined up for, the next couple of weeks to set up on these weekly TV shows and eventually the pay-per-view. But the card right now is, as we mentioned, the Knockouts World Championship on the line, Trinity versus Deonna Purrazzo. We get Will Ospreay versus Eddie Edwards. Eric Young and Josh Alexander teaming up to take on Subculture, the team of Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster. Jordynne Grace versus Danny Luna. We got the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin versus Moose and Brian Myers. We're going to get Rich Swann versus Frankie Kazarian versus Trey Miguel. Giselle Shaw versus Alex Windsor. And we got Joe Hendry versus Simon Miller. And I had to do my research on this, but Simon Miller is apparently a YouTuber and the host of What Culture. So he's going to be popping the ring with Joe Hendry. Apparently there was some drama that started with Joe Hendry and Simon Miller on Simon's Cook YouTube show, something like that. So this is what we have here for Turning Point. Like we said, it's going to be live tomorrow in the UK, so you guys can check out the spoilers, but it'll be airing on November 3rd, the following week. Pretty exciting card, but as I said, this feels like an Insurrection WWF European tour where nothing big's going to happen. You just can hope for great match quality.
Yeah, you're going to have great work rate, but I don't foresee, I'm with you, I don't foresee any titles changing or anything of that note. That's pretty cool with the Joe Hendry, Simon Miller tie-in. Man, like I said, I was not familiar with him before you filled me in, but I always like that when they're able to, incorporate another style, another outlet of media and entertainment, and bring it into the world of wrestling. That's always and that just speaks volumes to the way that Impact does business and how easy they are to work with. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm sure that'll be get a crowd excited. Man, Jordynne Grace and Danny Luna, that's going to be awesome. Exciting to see Subculture back in action. Haven't seen them very much. I mean, this is a hell of a card.
Yeah, and I'm just curious why they're not just airing it live with the time delay. Like, I understand that it is in the UK and you'd have to do it at a different time. Just air it on delay. People will watch it on demand. I don't know. I think at least the possibility that someone sees it live, to me, feels like it has more reverence that something big could happen.
I'm sure
pair
it's
it
got
with their overseas. It's so close to Bound for Glory. Those are two things in the corner, and then add on top of it's tape. There's no chance that anything big is going to happen, in my opinion. That's the way I look at it as a tenured wrestling fan.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially the fact that like the spoilers are going to be out there damn near a week before it actually airs. It's got to do so. It's got to have something to do with the scheduling availability on Fight. I would imagine that if they had the option to do it live, if Fight had that slot open, they'd get it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is too, like there isn't any real consequential matches as far as there's no world title match, the tag titles are not on the line. Like the only one is the Knockouts Championship, and we'd imagine that Deonna Purrazzo is not going to be taking the title back here. They just want a world championship defended. Everything else is just, watching the matches for work rate. Like we'd imagine Will Ospreay is going to beat Eddie Edwards, but we're hoping the match is going to be really good. Same thing with Motor City versus Moose and Brian Myers. Like it could go either way. But to me, like you're looking forward to the work rate. So I think it was strategic on their end to keep the card interesting, even if you know the results.
Sure. And I'm wondering too, if this is them setting up matches that these might be storylines and feuds that we see going forward, like post November, and that, getting the talent to get reps in together in the ring.
True.
It could be a strategic decision that way.
So we also have CM Punk was reportedly in the Impact Zone this weekend. So he made news here. Everyone, of course, leading up to Bound for Glory was expecting him. One, because obviously he is from Chicago. Two, being that Ace Steel was on a preliminary deal with Impact doing some producing role in the back. Of course, that leads to one, CM Punk. And House of Wrestling reported that Punk was backstage when Impact presented Bound for Glory. He was also at the Fallout TV taping on Sunday. And he reportedly arrived just before the taping began in order to avoid making a scene. And he has said to have spoken with anyone there who wanted time with him, including key Impact talent who he spoke to throughout the evening. Interesting. Your take on this? Like, is this just because it's in his hometown? He has some friends there, or is there something that there with this new rebrand launching to a bigger picture? Is CM Punk to TNA/Impact closer than we originally anticipated?
Hard to say, man. All the Punk stuff's getting played pretty close to the chest right now. It's hard to tell what's smoke and mirrors and what actually might have some sort of weight to it. Saw today, everybody's still, there's a lot of people saying there's no chance in hell he's showing up at Survivor Series. There's who really knows? I think this is probably, I would imagine this is because it was in his hometown, and also the fact that Ace Steel was working as a producer. It doesn't surprise me that Ace Steel was working as a producer. When I go to see, I've been to Derby City Wrestling events here in Louisville, which is United Wrestling Network, but they do have a lot of crossover. Like a lot of Impact talent are on those shows. Like Moose and Brian Myers are always on those shows. Peter Avalon is always on those shows. The last time I went to one, Ace Steel was coming out of the bathroom as I was going in. So he was working backstage there as well. So he's obviously comfortable with a lot of the Impact talent. And it seems like he's got a good relationship with them. So I think anytime they're in Chicago, they're going to get Ace. And I mean, it seems to me that Ace and CM Punk are a package deal at this point. If you see one, you usually see the other. So, I mean, we talked about it. I mean, I definitely think it is. At this point, I think it's more of a possibility that Punk being in TNA than Punk being in WWE, certainly. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's. I don't see the writing on the wall necessarily. I think this was just kind of a guy being around in his hometown, coming to see some people he knows, maybe offering some advice to some people who are looking for a change, instead of just offering it to anybody and everybody, whether they're looking for it or not. It's probably a nice change of pace. But yeah, I don't see anything that makes me think he's for sure coming through.
So Punk, want to clarify, he was not there on Saturday. Of course, he was at the Chicago Blackhawks home opener watching Connor Bedard tear it up for the league, which they're going to be bad this year, but I don't know if you watch hockey, but Bedard is fantastic I think he's 18 years old. Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
But, and I think he also voiced the Blackhawks opening video for the home opener. So the other interesting part was Ace Steel, he was working the tapings for the TV tapings as a producer. He apparently was considered to hop into the Enter the Call Your Shot gauntlet at Bound for Glory, and they decided against it, and they didn't want the fans to get their hopes up that Punk would be there. By seeing him, Ace Steel was warmly received by everyone backstage, by talent and producers alike. So I think this is, I think you said it perfectly. I don't see this as a precursor to CM Punk being an Impact. Obviously, the door is open for him if the deal makes sense, even on a one-off basis, and he gets as much creative control as he wants to figure out when and where he wants to work. Maybe he only does Chicago. Maybe he's only there once a year. maybe he does something similar to what Will Ospreay did. Like he comes in for a package amount, like 3 matches, something like that. If anyone warrants that, one of the biggest stars in wrestling, he does that. I would just continue to hope. We mentioned locker room being harmonious. That's what I would want it to continue to be. And I'm not saying that won't be the case if he's there. Maybe it's just, look at the chemistry chart. You introduce different, chemistry, different chemicals to different aspects. Sometimes they react differently in different environments, and maybe Impact and CM Punk will be harmonious and amazing. And he's still being there, being taken seriously. And he's someone that is being valued there. Maybe maybe the culture there is something that CM Punk can help, maybe not hurt. Who knows?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that the culture at Impact's different than any of the other promotions, and I think that's something that talent is always spoke highly of it for. And I mean, people who seem to not always get along in other places always seem to do pretty well here. So it could be the same case. So it could be the same case for Punk.
So finishing up the insight over here, we have the Chicago Fallout tapings card for the next few weeks. I have some matches to break down. I don't know exactly where they're going to be, but I will break them down for you guys and just tell you what's going to be on these next few tapings. So, of course, Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander. We're going to get Trinity versus Sonny Kiss, Bully Ray and Jordan Grace teaming up versus Kylan King and Steve Macklin, Black Taurus, Juventud Guerrera, and Laredo Kid versus the Rascals, which is the team of Zachary Wentz, Trey Miguel. But we get the debut of Myron Reed, which is going to be awesome to see. If you're familiar with Myron Reed, he's epic. So make sure you guys check that out. I don't know exactly what tapings this is going to be on, but we also have the Impact Tag Team Championship on the line. Chris Bay and Ace Austin versus Kenny King and Shelton Jean. We're going to get the Impact World Championship on the line. Alex Shelley versus John Gresham. Moose versus Heath. Eric Young versus Eddie Edwards. Joe Hendry versus Brian Myers. The Digital Media Championship. Tommy Dreamer versus Crazy Steve. Deanna Praza versus Tasha Steeles. And we're going to get Samurai Del Sol versus Alan Angels. And we're, of course, going to get this, as I mentioned before, the Thanksgiving special match where the loser must wear a turkey suit. So it's the team of PCO, Jake Something, Mike Bailey, and Johnny Swinger versus the Good Hands, John Schuyler and Jason Hotch, Champagne Singh, and Jay Vidal. So that's the card for the next 4 weeks. Throw in one of the UK tapings. I think there's one in the Glasgow they're going to put in here as well. So we're pretty much set where we're going.
Nice. Yeah, this is going to be some exciting stuff next couple of weeks. I feel like there's one other match that's got to be in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Knockouts Tag Team Championship. We didn't see it on the card the other night for Bound for Glory. So I feel like it's got to air here somewhere, right?
You might be right. I just, when I looked at the card, that I tried to look at it without seeing spoilers, that these are the matches that were revealed. It's possible that they lost them, because if we're looking at it here, we're looking at about 13 matches that are going to be spread across the next couple weeks. So
right,
it's possible that MK Ultra is going to be defending the title somewhere on here. So I think there's 3 title matches on here. Tag title, the world title, and digital media. So you're right, though. We haven't seen it.
So yeah, be interesting to see. It's going to be some good shows moving forward. It's going to be a nice way to round out the year.
So with that being said, let's get to blow by blow. Of course, if you guys listen to Wrestling Tonight, we did break down all the results of Bound for Glory. But being that we have a tape show here, we're going to give our thoughts on each of these matches. We're not going to go literally blow by blow, but we're going to be talking about these matches, what we thought about them, and what everything that went in leverage-wise for TNA/Impact. But let's get into the blow-by-blow.
Blow-by-blow.
All right, here we are, Chicago, CICERO Stadium. We have Bound for Glory to break down. And like we said before, if you were watching Impact on Access and you checked it out on YouTube or you checked it on Access, you did get to see some of these great matches. Work rate wise, you're able to check out some of the nonstop action, pun completely intended, on checking out this amazing card. But we didn't get to see all of it, Colton. So if you did not order the pay-per-view, you did not pay hard-earned money to watch it, you done messed up, because this whole card was absolutely top to bottom one of the best cards that we had the luxury of watching. I watched this on delay because I was doing the Rad Pro booking at Power Transfer, which was amazing, by the way. And man, I couldn't have been more impressed. They kept the foot on the gas this whole show, and they never let up, dude.
No, man, this was an incredible show. It's a reason it's their biggest show of the year. They over-delivered in every way for me. This was, it flew by, man. Yeah, like you said, they kept the foot on the gas the whole night. I thought every match seemed to have enough time. But I mean, by the end of it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, man! I can't believe it's over." It was such a good time. It flew by for me. Great matches from top to bottom of the card.
So we opened up with the X Division Championship. Chris Sabin defeated Kenta to retain the title, and as we talked about, we use this word dream match very loosely all over the place. It is their first singles match, but they shared the ring opposite of a trios match earlier this year. This was Saban's 13th Bound for Glory match. He's a 10-time X Division champion. The dude's been doing it nonstop all the time. This guy has been a stalwart for the Impact/TNA brand, carrying the torch, continuing it. This match was absolutely awesome, lived up to the billing. It might be overshadowed by the Will Ospreay Speedball match that happens later, but don't take away from this match as far as opening goes, setting the pace for the night. And I mean, I couldn't ask for and a clean win for Chris Sabin as well, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, there's no better way to open the night here. This was a great start to the card, really set the pace, like you said. And, you know, I don't think it was a secret. I don't think anybody had Kenta picked to win this belt. But, you know, Kenta looked great. This was this kind of blows my mind that this was their first singles match, but it was. And I hope it's not their last.
So speaking of match that we didn't pick the winner of this, it was PCO winning a Monsters Ball match over Steve Macklin and Moose and Rhino. As we talked about before, we were on the assumption that PCO was on his way out. And as a 55-year-old, a veteran of the wrestling industry, we'd imagine he was going out on his back. So unbeknownst to us, he has already been in talks to re-sign if he didn't already re-sign prior to Bound for Glory. And he got the win here. And this was really eye-opening for me. And I was very critical of it on Wrestling Tonight. And now I take it back because now on Tuesday, we saw the news that he did re-sign with the company. Makes a lot more sense because as we say before, the Monsters Ball match was a match that was akin to a guy like Abyss and different characters throughout wrestling. And PCO is, you know, that guy now. He carries on the legacy of all those guys that came before him, whether it be the Ravens or the Abysses. And, you know, he carries that. So the match to me lived up in that way. It was a lot of shenanigans, the weapons added to it. Of course, there's got to be tax, there's got to be concrete, that kind of stuff goes into it. I thought it was fun. Personally, I probably would have booked Moose to win. I really would have, especially where I want them to go. But now, and knowing that PCO re-signed, I'm okay with it.
I mean, I was okay with it in the moment too. I know neither of us picked him. You picked Moose. I picked Macklin to win this. But it was kind of a weird hodgepodge. You know, it would have been. I feel like at this point, looking back, anybody else winning it, it still would have not. I don't know how it really would have built anybody's story. Moose has already got the briefcase from the Feaster Fired match, so you know he doesn't really need any build. He can cash that in whenever he wants. I was also under the impression that PCO was on the way out, and there was just a nice homage to him to give him a win on the way out the door. But I like it even better knowing that he's sticking around. Did not see him getting the win by a mile. We'll say if you guys did not watch this, go back, find some clips on YouTube. If you're a hardcore match junkie, there is a spot where PCO gets powerbombed onto a bed of cinder blocks that are covered in tacks, and the tacks are just fully inserted in the back of his skull, man. Oh, yeah. Like 4 or 5 of them. It was pretty intense. It was a good visual.
Yeah, I mean, if you are, again, this is a plethora, a buffet of different styles, and this fit that and check that box for those watching the show that are looking for it. And I think really going into, which we didn't know at this point, rebranding to TNA, that's something that TNA would bring to the table outside of work rate and emphasizing maybe smaller town and then women was the hardcore scene, keeping that alive with a lot of the steam leaving because ECW going under and WWE eventually took on some of the hardcore stuff through Ruthless Aggression. But TNA carried that banner of, you know, sometimes showcasing guys that are a little bit more limited in the ring as far as work rate or what, you know, maneuvers go. But there is a storytelling and art-like presentation that a lot of people look at with hardcore wrestling. This was a story here. This is what it was. This was big meaty men slapping meat and then add concrete and tacks and chairs and all the other stuff that go into it. This may not be for everybody, but it certainly offered a different flavor on the card. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and I thought it was as far as placement on the card, this was the perfect place for it. You know, you put the most different match, you know, right after an opener that sets the pace. This is the card was arranged very well.
So we had the tag team championship on the line. Chris Bay and Ace Austin defeated the Rascals. You and I were looking forward to this match. Both teams have been at each other's throats for some time now. Of course, they've been, you know, drifting in and out of storytelling. They've been finding different opponents to go against, but it's always been about the Rascals versus ABC. And as we know, Wentz and Miguel were undefeated going into this match as a tag team. 4 years. So 8-0, 4 years teaming up. And These 4 competitors sharing the ring, and crazy to believe that it is the only time they've only shared the ring on a one-on-one basis, and it's only the first time in Impact that this team had wrestled each other. So it's pretty wild to think about, especially with how they've been playing cat and mouse against each other for the past couple months, that they never actually had a one-on-one tag team bout in Impact yet, because they've had other teams involved.
That's crazy, man. I don't think I realized that. But yeah, but it has been like a 3-way or a 4-way tag match every time. This is the first time that they got a chance to square off one-on-one. And man, this was a great match. Very, very similar to the first match. It was well paced, competitive, and the Rascals lived up to their reputation. They attempted to cheat, but for the first time since they've got those belts, it did not work out for them. It backfired. So it was which was a great way to see it go down.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about some people going home feeling good about yourself, and this being the conclusion of a lot of the Impact calendar. You wanted to put the finale on some stories, and I'm not sure if it's the finale of these two teams going at it, but I do feel like there was at the very least a little bit of a conclusion where we watched the Rascals get their comeuppance and the ABC get their titles back. And for the time being, all is copacetic in the universe of tag team wrestling with the teams. We'll see what rises up. I don't think the Rascals are done. It's cool to see Myron Reed get involved on the tapings, getting involved with them in the trios format. Who knows what other chaos they're going to be involved in? Maybe they'll do their one rough shot. Maybe we'll see Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel go after Alex Shelley. Who knows, dude? So I just think we haven't seen the last of the Rascals as a unit. That doesn't mean they're going to go after the tag titles again, but it's not certainly a bad thing, because we can reheat this up, because as we said, this is only the first time they wrestled in Impact, believe it or not, one-on-one. So I would love to see them run this back very soon.
Same here. Even if it's just one-off with the contractually obligated rematch, I'd watch these guys go against each other any day of the week.
So, of course, the match that everybody's talking about from this weekend, Will Ospreay defeated Speedball Mike Bailey. And we discussed this. I mean, we expected this to be good. And to me, Colton, I feel like this outshot my expectations, maybe because of the bar is really high for Will Ospreay, especially where he's been setting it match after match, whether it be the match with Zack Sabre Jr. as recently, maybe his matches with Kenny Omega twice this year. It felt like it would be impossible to top. And there is some recency bias for people that talk about this match being match of the year. And time will tell if this match is the match of the year. You could certainly make the argument for it. You could certainly put it in people's top 5. That being said, this match was absolutely epic. And I really like the function of this match, because those other matches that I mentioned before, the Omega match, the Zack Sabre Jr. match, those matches, those guys felt a little bit more established to me. And Speedball Mike Bailey, this feels like it could be a launch point where Will Ospreay put his all into this match to showcase what he knows, and a lot of the fans of Speedball Mike Bailey, what they know he's already been able to do and what he's been doing throughout PWG, GCW, all the other independents. He continues to work. He continues to show that side of him, and he did this on the biggest stage. And it's remarkable to me where people are talking about Mike Bailey now, where we've been kind of blowing that trumpet for the past few months, years, about Mike Bailey, how great he is. There's going to be, and I predicted at the beginning of the year that 2023 was going to be a year of Mike Bailey. Wound up being the year of Will Ospreay. 2024, coming off the 2023 win of Bola, PWG Battle of Los Angeles, Mike Bailey took that and is moving forward. How is this guy not looked at as far as one of the best wrestlers in the world? He kept pace with Will Ospreay every step of the way. Match was ridiculous. I mean, big fight feel, crowd energy. This is, man, there's not enough words to talk about what these two guys did. And maybe it is match of the year. It's too soon to crown it, because I've been marinating with Wrestle Kingdom with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega for so long. It's been the bar for me. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but you could certainly make the argument, which is crazy to see this late in the year.
Absolutely, man. I mean, this match was nothing short of incredible. This is as good as it gets. And, for those of us that know about Mike Bailey, like you said, man, we've been singing his praises for years now. We know that he is one of the best out there. But this match is a coronation for him, man. I mean, Ospreay picks up the win here, but there was neither guy comes out of this match looking lesser. This elevates the hell out of Mike Bailey, in my opinion. This match shows anybody who didn't know already that he's on the same level as Will Ospreay. They went tit for tat the entire match. There were multiple times that, and going into this, I knew Will Ospreay was going to win. but there were several near falls during this match where I was like, holy shit, Ospreay's going to put Mike Bailey over. And how cool that would have been. But honestly, man, he didn't need it. In my opinion, he came out looking just as good as if he would have won this match. This was incredible.
This was a rare instance where the result didn't matter. And in a lot of ways, you're watching this match where you're going to look back 5 years from now as this might be, as you said, a coronation, launch point, whatever it is, a star-making moment. And I think this is pointing case of veteran wrestlers, those that are looking at really, I mean, it just kind of puts in perspective where wrestling is in 2023 to where it probably was in 1993, where all the veterans were so much clinging to their spots that they didn't want to make new stars. They didn't want to let anybody else look good in lieu of them. And I think the mindset, pointing case being Will Ospreay here, he took it as his duty that night to show everybody what he knew that Mike Bailey could do, what the audience that, some of these arenas that he runs that have 300 people in them, or maybe less sometimes, what he shows on a nightly basis going out there, wrestling with no shoes on, with the stiffest kicks you can see, the most athletic, unique offense that you can find anywhere in the independents and elsewhere. He knows that the future of wrestling is dependent on someone like him. You're only as good as, the future winds up being. And I think Will Ospreay in this moment, and I might be putting too much into this, but someone like Will Ospreay, this is giving back to the business tenfold later in life, because Speedball Mike Bailey is going to have this match forever. Win, loss or draw, doesn't matter. Speedball Mike Bailey was put on the map because Will Ospreay gave him the time and gave him the platform and gave him the opportunity. And really, to give Mike Bailey credit, he rose up and then took it and ran with it further. So kudos to everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. It's no hard to argue that this isn't match of the night.
Match of the night, yes. I thought you were going to say match of the year. We'll see in a couple of weeks when I'm sitting here and like breaking down my match of the year. I still believe, I'm still in awe over the Ospreay Zack Sabre Jr. match that happened in the UK. That match was insane, but we'll see. I don't think we've ever seen anyone dominate as far as match quality per year. This is what must have been what it was like in the 70s and 80s with Ric Flair. Like when this guy was just dominating match of the year, where it's just Ric Flair versus Harley Race, Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair versus every single person. I feel like Will Ospreay is going to be 5, 6, 7 match deep of people's 10 matches of the years. And it's insane and well deserved too. It's not like people are, this guy is otherworldly right now.
Absolutely, man. And I think a lot of it has to, the number of excellent matches that he's had this year, has a lot to do with his talent, but it also has to do with how much the guy works, man. Like, you compare him, you look at how many matches Will Ospreay has wrestled this year versus how many matches Kenny Omega's wrestled this year. Now, I know Kenny was on the shelf for quite a bit for the shoulder surgery, but yeah, man, the guy's not afraid to make towns. Hell, he worked in Indy the night before All In. He doesn't have to do that shit. He's one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler in the world today. He does not have to work these small shows. He does not have to go back and work Impact, but he does it because he loves it, and he's one of the best out there doing it today.
I know it's recent because it just happened on Saturday. Do you think this match is better than the Orange Cassidy match at Forbidden Door? Because to me, that in a lot of ways, that was the first coming of Will Ospreay in the public psyche for the the North American fan that wasn't consuming him in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Was this better, or do you feel like you need more time?
Hard to say. If I have to make a call, I think this match was better for sure. I think it was. I'm going to go back, and after saying that, I am going to go back and watch Ospreay and Orange Cassidy and then compare my notes. My initial reaction is this match is better. I'm hard pressed to say this was better than Omega Ospreay 1 or 2 this year. I'm not ready to make that either one of those calls.
The thing is too, and even the understated matches that Ospreay's had this year, there was a timeline in July where every match, and I understand people don't put too much stock in the Wrestle Observer newsletter and Dave Meltzer, but there was a time in July where he had, I believe, every match he had was above 4.5 stars. And that's insane. He's working guys throughout the G1. Of course, like you're tired, you're beat up, the G1, and especially with the injuries he had lingering for him, just the ability to see it through and not take a night off, because that would be understandable. Nope, going out there and just putting on 4.5 bangers every single night and 5 stars and putting over new talent and showcasing younger talent and being the best wrestler in the world. So Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world right now. I'll say it every day. It does, like he right now in this moment in time, October 26, 2023, Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world. That might change this time next year, but for right now, the guy is otherworldly. We're living in special times, Colton.
We are. You get no argument from me on that right now. I can't argue that anybody's better. Not on today's date.
And it speaks volumes. Like if he comes over, and we've gone back to the inside story we were talking about, if he comes over to TNA and he's here full time and they change the way they tape and he can be showcased and people can come out in droves to see him, like he could be the guy you build around. He could be that guy for you. But the real question is, does he want to take that risk? Does he want to utilize the prime of his career, maybe a little bit past his prime because of how beat up he is, all the miles he had to put on his body to get here, instead of just immediately trying? Because if WWE comes calling, like, isn't that always the dream? Like, wasn't that always the dream?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. If you're I don't know. I don't want to tell people what their dreams are, but I would imagine if you're a professional wrestler at one point in your life, especially, growing up, WWE's got to be the dream. Whether you say what you want about the product, I was having this conversation with Ant-Man, our guest from Wrestle Chat, last night. You say what you want about the WWE product. Will Ospreay is the best wrestler in the world. If that is where he lands, you have to remember that the WWE fan base, there's a lot of those people who only watch WWE and they don't watch anything else, just for the sheer amount of exposure he would get. He doesn't need any more, but he could be introduced to a group of people who don't know who he is. And then, I mean, how much more does that do for your career to just extrapolate the numbers of the people who now know that you are the best thing going right now?
The only issue, though, is that he'd have to work at 0.35 speed in WWE. Like, he won't be able to do the things he does. And I saw a funny meme about Brian Pillman Jr., aka Lexus King, and someone was saying that can't wait till he runs the ropes really well or really fast, saying that AEW dropped the bag on him because of their lack of, like, anybody that can do the simple things really well, blow the WWE hive mind away. And that's good, whatever. That's fine. But I think Will Ospreay they would be shackling him to be put under the restraints of WWE. Maybe that's what he wants because it's safe. We watched it extend AJ Styles' career, Shinsuke Nakamura, Finn Balor. They're able to do the things and have spurts of time where they can have these matches that blow people away. But for the most part, they just become part of the machine, part of the cog. I would hate to see Will Ospreay be the recipient of like the last 3 years of AJ Styles booking. That would be my fear to watch that kind of unfold. Selfishly, and again, it's not about me, not about you, it's not about anybody else but Will, and like he can make the decision himself. I think for the betterment of professional wrestling, he can give back elsewhere, and it might be better suited, like you mentioned, AEW, kind of the best of both worlds. He can dip his toe back in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He can, fuck around and wrestle in CMLL if he wanted to, and then same thing with Impact. Like, there's an open door policy. I feel like you go to WWE, it's like locking yourself up, like selling your soul just to kind of be there,
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't think that WWE is where he goes now. I feel like for the level of star that he is, I feel like it is probably inevitable that he ends up there eventually. But I mean, dude's 30 years old.
A lot of miles on that body, though.
A lot of miles on that body, but he is taking better care of himself as he's,
True.
Chris Jericho talked about how he called him, 4 or 5 years ago. And was like, you have to slow down. And he has a little bit, and if he continues to take good care of himself, I mean, shit, man, go to WWE in 6 years, go when AJ did and run out the end of your career there. That's fine. You still got a lot of main eventing and a lot of mind blowing left to do, in my opinion.
So there's a great video that was going around X later in the week. I think it was around like Wednesday night or something like that. But it was a video of 2016. Paul Heyman personally invited Will Ospreay to an event where he offered Will a contract to make Evolve his American wrestling home. And prior to doing that, like, he was on the mic calling him call him out for like how great he is, and said he was, quote, revolutionary and evolutionary, and how people who don't understand how good he is, they don't understand professional wrestling. This comes from Paul Heyman in 2016. So this guy was able to see really the writing on the wall. Like, this is not a secret to those that have been in the know watching this unfold over time. And, Will Ospreay's always been that guy. I think finally he's getting his recognition. And yeah, I think he's been better. I think he's gotten better, of course, because like reps make you better and working on bigger stages make you better. But I think that there's a lot of clamoring. Like, I think that there's an opportunity here for him to really make a difference. And he has to he's at a fork in the road here where he can figure out where exactly does he want to go. And you mentioned 30. I thought he was a little bit older than that, but I understand New Japan Pro Wrestling really, it's like dog years there. So
it's true, man. Yeah, that's a good point.
But we'll continually talk about Will Ospreay going down the line and where he's going to go. Of course, selfishly here, it'd been awesome to see him at least contribute somewhat on the Impact / TNA, calendar at some capacity. Will he be here full time? Probably not. But I think he's a guy who warrants a piecemeal deal. We'll see if that happens for him. But we have Jordan Grace winning the 20-person Call Your Shot Gauntlet. So this was something we did not predict because we predicted it would be someone going after the Impact World title. Little did we know that she would be immediately going after Trinity at Hard to Kill, making that absolutely clear from the beginning. Other notes of this match, and I'll pass it to you. We had Sonny Kiss appearing as one of the entrants. We also had Matt Cardona, Brian Myers. We had Juventud Guerrera appearing here. Bully Ray, of course, was the last one to be eliminated, which, again, kudos to Bully Ray, seeing the progressiveness of pro wrestling, putting over Jordan Grace in that way. Love it. This was really, really well done.
Yeah, man, I thought this was great. This was a wonderful surprise. Jordan Grace winning this here makes a whole lot of sense, especially, with her just kind of getting back on the scene in Impact. I really, and I loved the surprises. I love that we got to see Cardona. I love we got to see Hoobie. It was a lot of fun, man. It made this, the surprise, and Sonny Kiss too, also premiering, was a really cool. It made it feel like the biggest show of the year, to have those faces that we don't see all the time, or some faces that we're seeing for the first time in the promotion come through and get in the ring. But yeah, super excited for Jordan Grace, and they've set it up, man. They've already set up a nice match for Hard to Kill come January, which will be the first TNA presented pay-per-view.
So we also have the Knockouts Championship on the line. Trinity defeated Mickie James to retain. This match it was good, but it felt like it was definitely overshadowed by some of the other stuff happening tonight. And this was a crowning moment for Trinity here. She got the tap off the Starstruck submission. Again, it offered up more conversation that Chad and I were having over at Wrestling Tonight. You guys can catch that on Monday at 7 p.m. or Tuesday in the morning for audio drop. Just about maybe Mickie James decides to go back to WWE in some way because of Nick Aldis being there. Am I thinking too much into it? Who knows? But this felt like righting a wrong that wanted to establish Trinity, similar to what they did in the main event. This person that never lost the title was always hanging over your shoulder, like kind of preventing you from being taken seriously in kayfabe wise. You had to right that wrong, and that's what they did here.
Yeah, and I thought this was a great match, man. I don't know if you saw. I saw some photos of Mickie on her Instagram, and she's pretty bruised up. This was a stiff match, man. Great work rate between both women. And we both called Mickie winning this, but I'm happy that Naomi went over. I think it definitely solidifies her. For her to take down a champion and a legend in Mickie James in her first chance. I mean, this is the first time they've ever gone one-on-one. They've tagged together. They've been a part of multi-body matches more than once, but I mean, this is a really nice notch in Trinity's belt, man, and it just solidifies her as being, the top of the mountain. And I thought it was cool. It was a great match.
So we led right into the Men's World Championship, the Impact World Championship. Alex Shelley defended against Josh Alexander. This match was awesome. This was every bit what you'd expect from when Josh Alexander was champion, and then on, he continued to churn out absolutely amazingly competitive matches. This was surprising to me, though, the way it went down with, Shelley escaping the ankle lock and then slapping the headgear off, almost like he was chipping away at the armor of Josh Alexander. First took the headgear off, then he kicked out the mouthpiece with the super kick, hit the shell shock for the 1, 2, 3. Similar story here is the Mickie James match, righting that wrong, making it feel like Alex Shelley was better than Josh Alexander on this given night as the champion. We now know Alexander is going to be facing Will Ospreay on these TV tapings coming up, which is already taped. Wonder where they go here. Are we going to have Josh Alexander lose 2 matches in a row? I have a hard time believing Will Ospreay is going to lose. So very, very intriguing here. This feels like we're on the precipice of potentially a Josh Alexander coming back into his own underdog type of story that maybe he has to look inward of, I don't know, maybe he undersold what it would take to beat Alex Shelley. Maybe he thought he could just hop back on the bike and be in front of the race again. because I don't know. I think they're adding some layers to Josh Alexander's character here that makes him have to overcome some adversity, both external and internal.
Yeah, I like this. You know, I had originally called. I thought Shelley was going to take it here in nefarious ways, and then you and I kept talking. And I went back and I was like, all right, no, I think this is Alexander getting it back. I liked this, man. This is not. I love being surprised, and Impact doesn't do us all the time. The fact that Shelley got a clean win here, man, I'm excited about it. And it also, you know, this is why he never made that. We saw heel tendencies from Shelley leading up to this program, but we never saw the full turn. And I'm happy that we didn't, because I like, you know, Shelley he's a company guy. He's, you know, been around from the beginning, and the fact that that's a big notch in his belt to get this win over Alexander. And you know, I think you might be right as far as them setting up, you know, him having to kind of come up from an underdog spot. But I could also see, man, Josh Alexander, you know, he was number 5 on the PWI list this year.
Yeah,
I could see this being I could also see this being kind of the transition into the fact that, like, Josh Alexander is such a big star, he doesn't need the belt.
true.
I'm inclined to think that he might get the win over Ospreay here. You know, Ospreay got that win over Mike Bailey. Ospreay doesn't take a lot of losses. At this point, a loss isn't going to hurt him, though. Think about what that would do for Josh Alexander to be able to say he got the win over Will Ospreay.
Oh yeah, and I think there's a lot of weight too, and whether they know it or not right now. But when you transition into TNA as the new brand, whoever's champion is, I think they want their slot of champions to be people that resonate with the brand. Because again, the transition into Hard to Kill, going into that pay-per-view as a TNA presented vehicle, I think the champions would be very important. Do they see Alex Shelley as being that guy going into January? There's a lot that can happen from the end of October until pretty much the end of January. From now until then, is there going to be a title change in any of these divisions to put a new person that's going to be carrying the weight of that championship into what is going to be a new era of a new company? I think Alex Shelley could be that guy. And I think once this match happened, once this is over, Alex Shelley won clean. All bets are off now. Like now the next defense, I feel like he could lose. And that's the exciting part. You mentioned unpredictability. There was a lot of that here because this match I predicted, you know, it's a tale as old as time in pro wrestling. It would be like Triple H coming back to WrestleMania 18 and not winning the title off the quad injury. It's like, yeah. I mean, I feel like the wrestling 101 logic was Josh Alexander comes, he wins the title back. He came back from this devastating injury. You put the title back on him. They went a different route. And again, the creativity on their end, the progressive mindset of we don't have to do it the way people have always been doing it. And stay tuned for the ride because they are going to be telling more stories here where these characters are driven more than just wins and losses. They're driven by, you know, internal, external struggle. They have an ability to tell stories on a very deeper level. And Josh Alexander here is an example of it where I'm now curious where Josh Alexander, the person behind the wrestler, where is he going from this? Because if you apply yourself into it, you work this hard to get back to the level for the title shot that you never lost, and you go back and lose in clean fashion. That has to be devastatingly humbling.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think it speaks to the kind of guy that Josh Alexander is, though. I mean, he is a company guy for sure at this point. You know, he's carried.
I'm talking about the character behind, like the
gotcha. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see where how he moves forward from this in his character development, because I could see it. You know, he gave, you know, he raised Shelley's hand at the end, which, you know, we could have seen him with the boo-boo face and, you know, kind of seen a slow burn heel turn for Josh Alexander, but that's not. I'm excited going forward into next. I'm excited to see next week because right now, like, I don't have a clue where we're going, man, and that's a fun place to be.
Absolutely. With that being said, let's get to the impactful moment, and I guess pick our favorite moment from Bound for Glory. Let's get to impactful.
Impactful.
All right, Colton. So here we are with Impactful. This is unique because usually we're picking off the weekly TV tapings, but I'll let you choose from the 2 slots. You could choose something from the news or something from that happened in the ring. I guess it kind of expands our world a little bit.
Sure. Hands down, man. It's got to be Ospreay Bailey. There's nothing. This card was great from top to bottom. The news has been super exciting all week, but This is one of the best matches of the year, man, and it was definitely the best match in Impact Wrestling for this year, for sure, bar none, in my opinion. And it was something to be seen. If you have not seen it, what are you doing? Find a way to watch it. Go get it right now. It is not to be missed.
Absolutely. And I have to say it's the same. I'm also going to give a close runner up to the rebranding to TNA. I think it's exciting. It's bringing eyes to the product. There is a buzz behind this brand that hasn't been there in quite some time. And maybe we're doing something for it. I don't know. I feel like the company is gaining a lot more momentum. There's been more discussion for it, even in our internal, circle of wrestling fans and friends. Like, we hear more conversations about what Impact's doing. You mentioned Bellcaster sharing it on his page. And like just the conversations about what's happening on a weekly basis. And I don't think everybody is back to watching a weekly basis for shows, but maybe the big events they're tuning in, and it's almost like a gateway drug. It gets you in the door, and maybe you're going to decide to consume it on a weekly basis. And then the calendar is very, very busy. And I was listening to, I believe it was Extra Cooler. They were talking about how there's really no time to watch all the wrestling out there, and you have to prioritize and find ways to do it. And Impact is pressuring people right now in the best way possible to making you feel like you can't miss their big events. And you'd be, there's always the old saying of you don't want to be left with FOMO. They're leaving you out there with the fear of missing out. If you don't watch whatever Impact's bringing to the pay-per-view or on their weekly TV, there's a chance you might miss something that everybody's talking about. And that's how you get people to watch. So I think they're building something special here. You give them a bigger platform. I think a TV deal is in the future somewhere. We watch NWA get the CW11 deal. I think we're going to find a new home for them. And then the growth is going to be exponential. We're going to see it kind of prosper. And if they continue, I'm confident that if they can continue the growth in-house, where they're going storyline-wise, roster-wise, consistency-wise, the harmony in the locker room, just building and telling consistent stories, there's no way, if you're a wrestling fan, that you watch this and you're not excited about it. It's just about getting people to be able to find it. You have to be able to guide people there and make it easy to consume. Because right now it's still very challenging because you have to go out of your way. You and I are going out our way to find it on YouTube and access who the hell has it. I think there's a time and place where, Will Ospreay and all these other talents are going to be showcased in a big way on a bigger platform. And it's coming sooner than later.
Yeah, if they keep on this trajectory, man, the sky's the limit.
Let's get to the final wrap up. We're going to, talk about what's coming up next week in the tavern, preview the weekend, all that stuff with shock and awe. Let's get there.
Shock and awe.
All right, Colton, next week's show is going to be on November 2nd for the weekly TV show on Impact, or at least we believe it will be. And we'll be talking about the latest news in all of Impact/TNA. We're going to be tying in some of that history to fill in the gaps. Make sure you guys tune in to everything we're doing here. But Colton, I'll give you the platform here. Give us the debate hype. What else is going on at Mullet.mania?
Follow me at Mullet.mania on Instagram. Yeah, man, debate show this week was great. We had Ant-Man from Wrestle Chat TV, both on YouTube and then on iHeartRadio as well. Great guest. My first time getting to sit on a debate with him. Chad was actually out this week with some other obligations. So it was myself, Sneed, and Tom sitting down with Ant-Man. Great conversation, man. Had a lot of fun. Talked about Will Ospreay, where he's potentially going to land. Talked about the TNA name change. And some other stuff, man. We had a fun round robin this week talking about WWE, heading over to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel. It's the debate's always a good time. It's dropping this Sunday on YouTube, and then also on Monday it'll be on Apple and Spotify. So if you guys prefer the audio version, that's where we'll be. Always theturnbuckettavern.com.
Hell yeah. So make sure you guys also check out tomorrow. We have Shot Nostalgia. We're going to be covering Saturday night's main event, 3 episodes. The Mega Powers explode. So we're going to be talking all about that. We get Macho Man finally attacking Hulk Hogan. We discuss who's really the heel, who's really the face in the whole situation. I know WWE, WWF wants to present Randy Savage as the bad guy in it, but who's to say, really, if you put yourself in the shoes of old Randy Savage, because he was dealing with some shit here with Hogan and Miss Elizabeth. But we have a really good conversation. Make sure you guys check it out. And if you can't watch on YouTube, make sure you guys check it out on audio. It drops on Saturday mornings. And if you guys are listening to this Friday morning on audio, or if you're listening to this tonight on Thursday, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., doors open for Halloween Haunted Havoc, Remarkable Wrestling. So we're going to be some amazing action there. So main evented by Dominic De Niro challenging Desmond Cole for the Remarkable Championship in a haunted Halloween hardcore match. So make sure you guys check that out if you guys are in the area in Wisconsin, New York. So they're going to be at the Remarkable Wrestling School, christening the building with their first ever show. So it's going to be really awesome. So if you're in the area, you don't want to miss it, man. It's going to be great. This will be my 1 year anniversary with Remarkable Wrestling. This will be, I started with the first ever Halloween Haunted Havoc show. And here we are now, a year later, doing the same stuff and new champions, new faces, but the same nonstop action we have with Remarkable Wrestling. So check it out. If you can't be there, check it out on IWTV. I'm not sure if it's live tomorrow, but you can also check it out on demand.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on a year. I mean, that's crazy. That flew by.
It did fly by. And you mentioned before, turnbuckletavern.com is where you can find all your stuff. So make sure you guys go there. Give us some love here on Spotify or Apple. Buy a shirt. It's getting, a little bit chilly outside. You want bonfire weather? There's some hoodies out there. Check that out. Turnbuckle Tavern logo will get some love. Wear it to a show. Wear it to a local show and get some love, man. We want to see a tavern sign out there at some of these AEW shows, WWE, or if you're going to a show and give a tavern, I just want to see a tavern logo in the crowd somewhere. That would make my day. If only Hawk would just bring it with him on the days that he goes and sits ringside. He just whatever. But Colton, that's all we got, man. This has been a blast. And, again, this was a different episode. We wound up going longer than usual, which is funny because I was thinking we're just going to go in the news and talk about stuff. But this one, I like the in-depth conversation, was able to take a breath to pause and really, ponder what the future holds for Impact Wrestling / TNA. I think there's a lot of good things on the horizon, and we're going to be seeing really the results of a lot of things. And the new era kicks off January 13th. Hard to Kill 2024. TNA is back, baby.
Yeah, man, lots to talk about this week. A lot of excitement around the rebrand, and man, just thank you guys all for hanging with us and coming along for the ride. We're going to be here, whether it's Impact, whether it's TNA, whatever we want to call it, man. We're here, we're strapped in, and we love bringing this product to you.
And until next week, guys, we appreciate the love and support. We will talk to you after a while.